So first of all, we will go through the endocrine embryology, the thyroid development, the thyroid development. So we have the thyroid diverticulum will go from the primitive pharynx, then it will go and descend into the neck. So it's connected to the tongue by what? By the thyroglosal duct. So it's normally this going to disappear, but it can persist. It will persist as what? As cyst or the pyramidal lobe of the thyroid. So we have something here called foramen cecum. What is the foramen cecum? It's the remnant of the thyroglosal duct. So we can see here the foramen cecum between what? Between the anterior 2/3 of the tongue and the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. So here we have the foramen cecum, now which is normally found as a remnant of the thyroglosal duct. Then the most common ectopic thyroid tissue found in what? Found in the tongue. Lingual thyroid, it's called the lingual thyroid. Then removal may result in hypothyroidism. Why? Because it may be the only thyroid tissue in the body. So you must know if it's the only one or not before doing the surgery to remove it. Then you have the thyroglossal duct cyst. Thyroglossal duct cyst found in the anterior midline of the neck, and it's very characteristic for it. It will move with the swallowing and also protrusion of the tongue. Then there is another thing called persistent cervical sinus, which will lead to the pharyngeal cleft cyst. It's found in the lateral part of the neck. So you have the thyroglossal duct cyst, which is found in the anterior midline of the neck, and it will move with the swallowing and protrusion of the tongue. But you have another one called persistent cervical sinus, which is the pharyngeal cleft cyst, found in the lateral part of the neck. Then you have the thyroid follicular cells and you have the parafollicular cells. What is the difference in the derivative between them? The thyroid follicular cells from the endoderm. The parafollicular cells found from the fourth pharyngeal pouch. So you have the thyroid follicular cells from the endoderm, and you have the parafollicular cells arise from the fourth pharyngeal pouch. Then in the blood supply for the thyroid, you have the internal carotid artery and external carotid artery. External carotid artery will give the superior thyroid artery, which will supply the superior part of the thyroid. And you have another one, the thyrocervical trunk will give the inferior thyroid artery, which will supply the inferior part of the thyroid. Then endocrine anatomy. You have the pituitary gland, you have the anterior pituitary, and you have the posterior pituitary. In the anterior pituitary, it's called the adenohypophysis. So A with A. So anterior pituitary with adenohypophysis. Posterior pituitary, you have neurohypophysis. Why it's neuro? You see here, you can see it's derived from what? Neuroectoderm. So you have the anterior pituitary and you have the posterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary will secrete what? Will secrete FSH, LH, ACTH, TSH, prolactin, growth hormone, and beta endorphin. But there is another one will be released from the intermediate lobe of the pituitary, which is called what? It's called MSH, melanotropion. It's from the intermediate lobe of the pituitary. But the anterior pituitary will release FSH, LH, ACTH, TSH, prolactin, and growth hormone. So it's derived from what? This is so important. Anterior pituitary from the Raskis pouch. Then you have the alpha subunit and you have the beta subunit. Alpha subunit, it's a subunit common between what? Common between human chorionic gonadotropin, FSH, LH, TSH. So the beta subunit, it's more specific for it. But the alpha, it's not specific. Why? The alpha part of human chorionic gonadotropin, it's common with FSH, LH, and TSH. Then you have the most important part here, pro-opiomelanocortin. Pro-opiomelanocortin. What is pro-opiomelanocortin? It's derivatives. You have the beta endorphin, you have ACTH and MSH. What is the most important here? MSH and ACTH. Why? Because MSH is specific for the hyperpigmentation. So if there is increase in ACTH, so MSH will increase, leading to hyperpigmentation, because there is a common origin for both of them, which is pro-opiomelanocortin. Then there is another thing here which is so important. You have basophils and you have acidophils. So how to memorize it? You must memorize acidophils, and the remaining part will be basophils. The remaining part will be basophils. Acidophils like what? Prolactin and growth hormone. Prolactin and growth hormone. So the remaining part like FSH, LH, and ACTH, TSH, all of them basophils. All of them basophils. Acidophils, it's prolactin and growth hormone. Then we will go to the posterior pituitary. In the posterior pituitary, it will store and release the vasopressin. It's important to concentrate here, because it stores what? Antidiuretic hormone, ADH, oxytocin. Why it's stores here is so important? Because both of them will made in hypothalamus. So the factory itself is hypothalamus, but the store in the posterior pituitary. So in the supraoptic, and you have paraventricular nuclei. It's the factory for both of them, and it will be transported into the posterior pituitary by what? By neurophysins, which is the carrier proteins. So it's made in the hypothalamus. So then it will be transported through the neurophysins. Then it will reach to the posterior pituitary, which will store it. Then it will release it. Then it's derived from what? It's derived from the neuroectoderm. So you have the anterior pituitary from the Raskis pouch, and you have the posterior pituitary neuroectoderm, and it's called neurohypophysis. Then what? Then the adrenal cortex and medulla. In the adrenal cortex, it's derived from what? From the mesoderm. In the medulla, it's derived from what? From the neural crest. So how to remember them? In the adrenal cortex, you have GFR. So you have zona glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. It's called what? It's the cortex. But the chromaffin cells, it's from the medulla. So you have from the outer part into the inner part in the cortex. You have GFR, glomerulosa, fasciculata, reticularis, and here mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids.